So let's go directly to agenda. First of all, I will start from telling you why it's worth bothering ourselves to move from legacy build systems into Gitlab supported with virtualization techniques like Docker or VMware. Then, as I said, I will show you why the Gitlab is rescue for most of the issues that we might have within continuous integration and continuous deployment. Then I will show why we have encapsulated everything with Fastlane. Then I will talk how we virtualized a whole build process, starting from preparing a build, packing all of the files that are required for further, for example, for white label apps that we do at the company, up to through performing a build, no matter if it's Android or iOS or hybrid apps, and then moving on to upload for OTA distribution. There are also some limitations. I will talk about it a bit further. Yeah. So why to bother? Why we get into that moment that we thought, okay, there should be another way to perform a builds, to go on with continuous integration mostly and continuous deployment for us and for our clients. Why we made that step forward to GitLab. So first of all, that we had some kind of merciless queues when you were waiting to push a release. For example, we have a publishing platform that is white label foundation for newspaper issuers, and then when we wanted to start a build, we performed some changes. Then we were ready to go and we were ready to push it to the clients, and then somebody had to run 8 or 9 separate builds just for continuous deployment and wait for it. And of course, you got information from the client that, okay, we are pushing it to the stores tomorrow or this day, and then basically you have to wait. You have no other option. You can provision. You can't just provision the new server for your needs right now. You have to wait until the queue, until your job gets into the queue and gets into the execution. Second problem that we found was conflicting dependencies, mostly between Android and hybrid builds. So we have a really variety of projects and products that we ship. Some of them are brand new, bleeding edge technologies like React Native. And on the other hand, we got also some legacy old projects for some of the clients in technologies like Cordova or PhoneGap. So then there were quite significant problems with building with one version of Android API and one version of Cordova, for example, and another project that needs separate Cordova version and had some conflicts between the previous one. So there was no easy, straightforward solution for that problem. So we came first into the idea of creating separate instances of automation servers for each of the clients, for each of the projects. But then you got the limitation that 90% of the time the machine is idle and it does nothing. That going on with separate Jenkins slaves, that was quite promising, but unfortunately, after some time, it's that system to launch Jenkins slave is terribly error prone. So it will start or it will not. And then you have, if you have some problems with provisioning Java Web Start applet, for example, or JNLP launcher, then you can just manually access the machine and trying to figure out what's going on and why it's not connecting to Jenkins. We spent not extremely big, but quite significant amount of time for just relaunching problems with Jenkins slaves. So we were looking for any replacement. The last approach was to execute command on the master that will just run a slave and run Java Web Start on the guest system or on the separate machine on the slave through SSH. But that was, as I said, that was not the silver bullet. And what we faced also was a keychain and provisioning profiles injection problems with Jenkins, and how to share these credentials with slaves, or should we either store provisioning profiles and certificates manually on the slaves or on master and then go on with that. And then we came into the idea that, okay, there's a plugin for that, and there is a keychain provisioning profiles management for Jenkins, but unfortunately it's like to say not the most stable solution, because then we were going with that, everything was fine for 1 month, and then new project starts, we are exporting the certificate and provisioning profile, we are putting it into keychain and provisioning profile, and then we have this response from Jenkins that no, you won't do it. And for example, those are logs that we saw. So first of all, we have a successful information about unlocking keychain. Then we have code signing identity grabbed from the certificate without the keychain. And then after a while of building, we got archive failed on copy Swift libs. When you were digging into you saw that there's no significant error message. There was only like signing failed, and we didn't know what's going on. Finally, after a long time spent on trying to figure out what's going on with that certificate, with that keychains, we were importing keychains into our machines, trying to run it, everything was fine. But then, after a while, somebody said, "Okay, let's try to export it from another Mac, that certificate and that certificate inside keychain. So try to export keychain from another Mac and set another password for that, and let's run it once more." And then it just magically works. So we still don't know what was the problem, and the issue on the issue tracker is still awaiting input for something like a few months right now. We had also problems with consecutive builds using different Xcode versions. As I said, we used to have, and we have still, some legacy projects that are, for example, in Swift, because of our client requirements, that they don't want to migrate, they just want to release a new version after some time, and they are not interested into maintaining it actively. So we had to use previous Xcode 7.3 for that. And when you were running builds with Xcode 8 and then switching to Xcode 7, you are likely to see the assertion basically crash within the simulator service just after running, just when unit tests starts, and you have internal error. Then you have to remove the rev data. You have to reset the simulator, and then you can go on with build. So, as we are on the business day today, why to bother? I was talking with our accountants within Neofonie, and the thing was right now that we had quite relatively high maintenance costs of our continuous integration and continuous deployment. First of all, you have to get DevOps involved into the whole process, just not to make developers be fully involved into not exactly the development process, but the delivering. Then we have also there are some issues like there are some issues that needs developers consultation, developers involvement. So as I said before, for example, for the project with keychain and signing issue, development is slowing down because we are fighting with some external issues that we that we are facing, and we can't focus on the development itself. Then you have to update the slaves separately. So there was nothing created to update it in bundles. Then we had to use few separate physical machines to keep it at desired performance. So the question was why not trying to fix the leaks within the Xcode and try to solve it with moving into self-contained continuous integrations and a continuous deployment system. So then we got a Gitlab for the rescue that seems to be almost the silver bullet for us. And I will talk a few words about that GitLab. So first of all, we have a community edition that is free of charge, and you can install it on your own server, but all of the maintenance and is on your side. And then you have an enterprise edition that is paid by user. You can have it as a hosted GitLab service, or you can install it on your own infrastructure. Then you have supported open source model. So if you have any issue with that, you can just approach the guys in GitLab, and then they are more than likely helping you with solution for your problem. We got something GitLab has something what was really significant for us, that is GitLab runners. So easy to use, easy to provision way to run instances, no matter if it's physical machine or is Docker container or virtual machine. Just run another instance of the machine that will build our apps. So, and the second thing is that GitLab was covering almost whole development process for us. So first of all, we got an issue tracker and board tracker. There's a repository management, since Git is a part of the GitLab itself. You have, of course, merge requests that are equivalent of pull requests. In other systems, we have a code review and diff tools. We have normal continuous integration for testing. We have something what was really significant for us, so auto-scaling runners. So if if we wanted to have, if we are waiting for builds and we have, for example, few concurrent build to be run, we don't have to wait within the queue. We are just automatically provisioning new containers or virtual machine instances and run the builds in there. Then just set it down, and that's all. Then we have app reviews from the tester's perspective within the GitLab. We have continuous integration and continuous deployment pipelines, so that supports both automatic and manual deployment. So right now, for example, for white label app for pharmacies in Germany, that is something like 400 pharmacies based on one white label code. We don't have to upload it manually to the store. We are just using Fastlane supported, GitLab supported with Fastlane, and the submission and the update process of all of the apps within the App Store is seamless right now for us. There is a container registry. I will talk about it a bit later. Basically, is the place where you store your Docker images store your Docker images for later use within your for your projects. Then we have release cycle analytics. So if development is slowing down or testing is slowing down, we have it in one single place. We don't have to run through the tools like we have Workfront, Jira, and so on and so on and so on. Just one point of interest for now, and that's all. We have a performance monitoring for the project, and of course we have a Gitlab runners. First of all, on our side, Gitlab runners are totally isolated from each other because it's separate, either separate instance of virtual machine for iOS or separate Docker container that is dynamically provisioned, run only for the build time, and then settling down. That, as I said, this is scalable thanks to the Docker registry and virtual machines. It's really trivial to configure, especially when you compare it to configuring the Jenkins slave and setting up the Jenkins slaves, especially if you have virtual machines, if you want to run it on the Docker or run it on the machines that are in totally different physical location. And what's else? Gitlab runner is a single binary that has no external dependencies. So if we would like to build something, if we would have to build some project on, for example, CentOS, we can just run a Gitlab runner binary, and that's all. It's registered. It's easy as this. So, for example, let's have a look. What is the flow of registering new GitLab runner? So first of all, you go to your project or the setup of your team. You go to your project, you go to the settings, pipelines, and then you have all of the information needed to run to provision new GitLab runner. So first of all, we only have to know the registration token for GitLab runner and the address of the GitLab runner. So for example, you have shared runners that can be run within multiple projects. And you can also have a specific runner that is intended to use only for your project. So if you would like to, for example, use your Mac as a continuous integration server, you just install GitLab runner on your Mac, and when your computer is idle, then you can run builds on your computer, but only from the project that you work on. Let's have a look at an example. So first of all, this is all you need to do to set up GitLab runner at once. You do it only once, and then you use it within your project. So first of all, you have to download the binary, make it executable, and run register. During register, you are going with providing the URL of your GitLab CI, then secret token name that will be used for this builder, for this runner, then tags that will be used within your projects within GitLab CI YML configuration file within your project. You say if it's intended only to run the builds, for example, that fulfill those tags, or it can run each single build. And if we would like to log that runner only for the current project, so nobody uses that exact machine for his own project, and then we have selection of the executor. So selection of what this machine will basically be. So first of all, we have a VirtualBox. This is not recommended because of the performance of VirtualBox. There is a Kubernetes for creating new instances and provisioning it automatically. You have a Docker, of course. You can access Docker. You can provision Docker and connect to the Docker via SSH. You can use Parallels virtualization. We used VMware instead because of the licensing issues with Parallels. You can just run the shell on the master on that machine that runs runner. You have also SSH, Docker SSH plus machine, and so on. Let's choose shell, and that's all. That was something that you can do in 2 minutes, and then you have your runner specified only for your project within the available runners for your project. That's all of the configuration that you have. Okay, so for GitLab Runner, you can run jobs locally, no matter if it's a physical or virtual machine. You can use Docker container. As I said, you can use Docker container and execute job over SSH. You can use Docker container and auto-scale it, run provision as much Docker instances as you want in that exact moment, and you can connect to external SSH server. So when we had that main tool as a GitLab, we wanted also to all of our team to be able to build up, no matter if you are a tester, if you are Android developer or iOS developer. And it's always like you are wondering, what do you have to run? If I'm iOS developer, I was always wondering what kind of task should I run within the Android build to perform, for example, build for Google Play Store. And there was this is straightforward when you work in the technology, but then if you for some reason had to do on your own on the platform that is not your core platform, that you are uselessly spending time to figure it out. So for iOS, right now with Fastlane, we have automation done by running a test for iOS and macOS apps, handling certificates and provisioning profiles, building the apps. It encapsulates Xcode build with Gym tool from Fastlane, and we handle whole iTunes Connect flow within the Fastlane just by running one command line command. Then within the handling whole iTunes Connect flow, I mean creating a new apps on iTunes Connect. It's especially usable when you have white label apps like we do with that for pharmacies, and you don't have to do it manually. You are just providing the metadata for the app, and Fastlane creates iTunes Connect and developer portal entry for us, and we don't have to take care about it. We are using it for automatically taking localized screenshots on the devices that we had to use later to upload it to iTunes Connect, both with metadata and binaries. Then for Android, we have encapsulated Gradle tasks within the Fastlane. As I said before, we have a single interface for both platforms, both iOS and Android. I will talk about it later. We are performing screenshots creation on multiple devices using Fastlane tool. And of course, as with Jenkins, we are uploading binaries, metadata, and screenshots to Google Play automatically. Then, how about encapsulating? How about some overhead that we have to do? Is just to run Fastlane command initially within the project. It will create the Fastlane directory in the project repository, in the project directory, that will contain at least fastfile and appfile. Fastfile defines a build lanes that we will later use to create the app. and then app file defines information needed for either App Store or Google Play. As I said about the same command line interface for all platforms, right now users just have to fetch the project, run Fastlane, lane test, and you are sure that it will run on your computer, and that will prepare a build for example, for unit tests. The first option. Second would be beta for deploying for OTA, either OTA or test flight. Or we get a lane store that does everything what I said before. So builds the app, creates screenshots, uploads the metadata and binary to the store. Then what's beneath the Fastlane lane test, that common command line interface for both platforms? For Android, I was trying to put here as uncomplicated example as possible. So this is running a Gradle task that is named test within the Fastlane, and this is running the Xcode UI tests on iOS. So basically, that's that's minimum viable thing that you have to do to get this single interface for both platforms. And going on later, I think it's, yeah. Let's go straight to why we went into virtualizing everything. First of all, we have Docker images for Android builds that are stored in Gitlab Docker repository. It's totally isolated from each other, it's scalable, and we have ability to run it with cache. So for continuous integration or we can perform incremental build, even incremental builds. We don't have to wait for downloading dependencies, for example, from Maven on the very beginning, because we can store it locally. And we can perform, of course, clean build with fetching all of the dependencies in the very beginning. Right now we are thinking about next step, so adding a proxy that will cache those dependencies on our end, so in our internal network, and then we will run it. Then we will be able to run the clean builds each time, and it will be more or less at the same speed of builds with cached dependencies. How does it look from the GitLab and Docker perspective? So first of all, this is part of the configuration file for GitLab, how it should run the build. So we are specifying the stages. We have stage build right now, and we are specifying the image. It should Docker image that should use to perform that build. And we don't have to take care where it will be, where it will be run, what machine are we going to use for that, and just choose the image that you want, say the tags of the system that you want to use, and tell first of all which script on this Docker we should run. For example, Fastlane lane beta. And that could be also Gradle, assemble, debug, or assemble beta, whatever. And we specify for GitLab artifacts to be collected. So all of the output of the build system that we specify in here will be available via GitLab CI page with your builds. For macOS, it's a little bit more complicated because we can't use Docker. And you can run, because of the license limitations, you can run virtual machines on, or you can't run Mac OS on any other device than Mac, no matter what kind of Mac is it. And for this, we use Mac Minis and Mac Pros that has VMware Fusion Pro installed in there, and we use the one image of macOS system that has snapshots with different Xcode versions. First, thanks to that, we are saving first of all disk space, because virtual machines with full dependencies with Xcode might be might allocate a lot of storage, and for this we have only right now serial execution of builds on the host, because we saw that running it in parallel significantly enlarge the overall time of the build. So it's better for us right now to run the serial execution one by one, but much faster. Then we have a helper script on HostMag that is launching selected snapshots that we would like to use. So it's launching the snapshot with exact Xcode version and exact other dependencies, like the, let's say, Cordova version, just for one use, and then we have the same state each time, and each snapshot has its own runner installed. That's one trick that we used. And for example, iOS pipeline for GitLab CI YML is to run the selected version of Xcode, build, and settle down the snapshot. So it's as easy as that. So we have up the exact version of Xcode. We use for that runner that's named iOS coordinator. We said, okay, use iOS coordinator, set up Xcode 8.3.3, and that's all. Within a few seconds, we have the brand new instance that is totally clean without any derived data or any leftovers after previous builds. Then we just build the project by doing Fastlane beta that encapsulates all of the comments. We have tags to be used, basically the version of Xcode to be used for that build. And then we have even Dockerized uploading OTA distribution, our internal OTA distribution. So we have, as before, we have Docker image that we run, and we are running script with providing two parameters, that which folder on our server to use and what will be the final URL to the file that we are uploading. Okay, so we are going to the end. So let's talk just a few words about limitations that we found right now. So first of all, GitLab lacks of plugin mechanism. So you can't just write your own plugin as you can for Jenkins, but you can, but you of course can create your own fork of GitLab, as it's open source, and adjust it to your needs. And you can also run the scripts within your pipeline, project pipeline, to do what you would like to do. And the second limitation that we found is that even despite VMware Virtual Machines snapshots, disk usage is significant. And that's all. I'm waiting for your questions.
How much I have to pay you to configure it on Białystok, in Białystok?
I would have first to get to Białystok. You don't have to really spend much time on it. For us, you can use commercial version, cloud version of GitLab, so you don't have to take care about CI. The same. You don't have to take care of the base infrastructure. So you have your Git repository, you have all of the configuration for GitLab done by them. You just pay them starting from $4 US per month per user, and then you are attaching your runners for your projects, and that's all. We will later publish let's say, whole tutorial how to deal with that on our blog, and then I hope that will be something that you can just go through the list of the steps, and you have your own working infrastructure. Any other questions?
Nice work.
Thanks.
Who is responsible in your team for managing all this infrastructure? It's a separate person, or it's daily part of your programmers?
Actually, we are trying not to give the whole responsibility for only one person because of many reasons. Because of track factor, because of the probability that he or she will out her work. So it's distributed between few people. There are both developers, testers, and project managers. So everybody can just get into that. So for example, for managing the GitLab itself, we got our two testers and DevOps from the mother company, from Neofonie. So it's totally distributed within the team. So right now, nobody spends more than 1 hour per month on maintaining that thing.
Cool. One more question.
Mm-hmm.
Could you clarify, is there any problem with cases when you should build, for example, pull request observers?
Mm-hmm.
And if is there any problem in cancellation outdated task if, for example, target or source branch changes?
Okay, so
something like that.
Okay, so first of all, as GitLab encapsulates both CI and Git repository, then you don't have any problem to you don't have to do any kind of webhooks to inform about pull request and stuff like this. Next thing is that you can cancel a build at any time. You are just going to your project. You are just going to your
automatically.
Sorry?
Automatically or manually?
You have to do it manually right now. You can do it by your own. Most probably, you will need some extra script that will just go through all of the workers and cancel it. We don't need it right now, so we are not investigating into that.
And if we don't host, for example, our source on a GitLab, is there any integration with other? For example, Bitbucket, GitHub.
We used to use Bitbucket, and at first we started. Right now we are using cloud version, but before we were using our own hosted version of GitLab, and we wanted to keep our Bitbucket repositories for that. And within the enterprise edition, you have something like repository mirroring. So each commit you push to Git to GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever service it is, you will also have it mirrored to your GitLab's Git, and then you can use it. But right now we switch completely to GitLab from the Bitbucket.
Thank
you.
Thanks for the talk. And could you please tell how long did it take you to move all your build jobs and scripts from Jenkins slaves to the new system?
Okay, it has started as a off project during our slack time between projects. There was an idea. Okay, let's do something with that. Then after a week, we had first infrastructure set up, and then we spent some more time for switching to the cloud version as a final solution, and that's what we are asking for. So how much it took to move everything. we were not doing it for all the projects. There was something like, okay, if you are working on that project, just change the scripts that we have right now to that GitLab CI/YML configuration file. This is a single configuration file. Then we used to use our custom Ruby build script. So most of the classes and most of the actions, if we have something totally custom, like preparing a new versions of white label apps based on the files that are provided by the client, we were migrating the whole Ruby classes into the Fastlane, and it works like a charm. So it's not really a big deal when you don't have to do it on your own for all of the projects. But when you let your team know how to deal with that, they just spend, depending on the projects, if it's normal project that you just run a build, that's something like 15 minutes to set it up. If you have something really complex, that's not extremely complicated, but not trivial tough.
Okay, thank you.
So if you want to see something more, just go with the docs. Those are really brilliant, especially when you compare it to the documentation of Jenkins or anything else. You can see GitLab.com, Docker docs. If you would like to perform, iOS builds or macOS builds, then just go through the learning CLI for VMware, that is VM-Run. Of course, I totally recommend you to support GitLab and that infrastructure with Fastlane. And I hope that soon we will publish the blog post about moving from Jenkins to GitLab. And that's all from my side. Thanks. Questions?
I have a simple question. Tell me, please, how much time it takes for a single run of a single pipeline from start to finish?
Depending on the size of the project. If you have trivial...
In your case?
In my case? Let's say like this. When you see, when you have a look at this example iOS pipeline, this is around 10 seconds on Mac. This is 10 seconds on Mac with SSD drive. This is the build time of your app, basically. It's maybe 5% slower than running it on your physical machine. But you have right now with Intel i5 and i7 hardware support for virtualization, so it's not, from my perspective, it's not even visible difference between running it on directly and running it within the VMware, and then putting the machine down is less than 1 second.
Okay, as I understood, you use Mac Minis as a build.
We use Mac Minis and Mac Pro.
And how much Mac Minis do you use?
Right now we have 2 Mac Minis. One has dedicated runner for white label apps for one of the clients because of the amount of the apps that are built on that. The second one is dedicated for our projects, and most probably with new projects ongoing, that will be also some kind of white label that will have multiple apps to be released based on the same core. Then we most probably will use the separate machine for that.
Okay, thank you. And I have a last question. Have you tried to use the machines of your colleagues as the slaves?
We were testing it initially like this. And everything is fine until you run many projects on that. Because when you are working on your Mac, and for example, it don't have to be in the same network. You just have to get internet access and some kind of connection with your GitLab instance. So when you are somewhere totally else and somebody run a build and you see, hey, what's going on? Why it's just why the fans are going high? And then you see, okay, I haven't turned off the GitLab runner. So yeah, you could do it, absolutely, especially if you have some really powerful Mac Pros or iMacs, then just feel free to do it. But I would not recommend this because of the downtime, because of the fact that somebody can just turn off his or her computer. So it's maybe not the way to go for the production system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your questions and thank you for your speech.
Thank you.
Now in 5 minutes.